The kitchen was a war zone. $200 copper pans screamed. Oil spat like gunfire. Chef Andre stalked the line like a general. He didn't see food. He saw data points. To the staff, he was a tyrant. To the culinary world, he was a god. Too much salt, Andre hissed, snatching a plate midair. The junior chef flinched. Andre didn't yell. He just stared. He scraped the $100 reduction into the trash with a single thumb swipe. The standard was simple. Absolute perfection. 2 stars made him a master. The third would make him eternal. Again, Andre commanded. The inspectors aren't here for excuses. They're here for miracles. Every eye in the kitchen darted to the red rotary phone on the wall. It sat there like a bruised altar, silent and mocking. One call from that phone would either crown Andre a legend or break his soul. Paris, on the other side of the walls, was wet and blinking. Rain fell in hard, straight lines, as if someone in the sky had finally tipped the pot all the way over. The gutters foamed. Headlights smeared themselves into golden streaks on the slick black asphalt. The river rolled past like a long strip of torn metal, the city's lights bending and breaking on its surface. Neon signs fought the storm. A pink one buzzed over a bar on the corner, the letters stuttering so that ouvert became O-E-R-O-E-R, like a tired heartbeat. A blue sign further down the street spluttered light onto puddles, turning them into shallow electric oceans. Sounds spilled from half-open doors, music, laughter, the low rumble of other lives. Inside a taxi, someone argued with the driver about football. Under an awning, a woman shook out her umbrella and checked her watch. A stray dog trotted past, unbothered, its fur pressed sleek by the rain. The street outside the restaurant was nearly empty. The tall windows were filmed with water, streaks tracing downward like slow tears. From the inside, they saw only shadows moving behind distorted glass. From the outside, the dining room was a bright, blurred aquarium, human shapes shimmering in warm light. The rain washed everything equally. Sidewalks, gutters, the awning of the bistro, the glass of a phone booth collecting stray reflections. It drew clean gray lines through the lights, as if erasing them as fast as they appeared. The restaurant's bright windows shone stubbornly back at the night. Inside, a god paced on tiles, lost in his own world. The knife handles gleamed, wet from constant wiping. So did the knuckles around them. The staff in the kitchen were pale and bloodless, fingers curled with such force that the skin pulled tight and shiny across bone. On the fish station, a young cook's hand hovered above a fillet of turbot and did not quite tremble, because he would rather die than let it. A bead of sweat slid down from his hairline and clung to his jaw, unable to fall in the heated, crowded air. On the far wall, the red phone waited, its glossy surface reflecting a tiny, warped version of the kitchen. Every time someone turned toward the wall to grab a ladle or a pan, their eyes flicked to the phone. It glowed dully, a mute guardian. The more they looked at it, the more it seemed to own the room. If you cut yourself, bleed into the bin, not the béarnaise. Andre's voice cut through the air. Yes, chef, came a chorus, even from those who weren't bleeding. Waiters slipped in and out through the swing doors, tie knots tight against their throats, shirts glued to their spines. They moved with surface grace, but their breathing hitched when they thought no one was listening. One, a young man with hair too long for Andre's tastes, pressed his hand briefly against his sternum as he waited at the pass, feeling his heart hammering like it was trying to cook its way out. Stop sighing. You sound like bellows, Andre said without looking up. The waiter froze, then forced his chest still. On the stove, the risotto for table 12 thickened and sighed with each slow turn of the wooden spoon. The pan had been stirred so carefully, so constantly, that it now gave off a steady rhythm, like breathing. Chef, risotto to mount, murmured the saucier. Andre stepped in, shouldering the man aside with a familiarity that still made the younger cook shiver. He took the spoon like a conductor accepting his baton. Around them, the kitchen pressed closer, every ear tilted toward the pan. The stock smelled of roasted bones and bay leaf. Butter waited, pale and cold, in a chipped ramekin. Grated Parmesan drifted down afterward in a fine snow, folding into the mass. Too thick, Andre muttered. His hand flicked, quick as a magician's, adding a splash more stock. You could stand a spoon in that. He stirred. The grains loosened, relaxed around one another, until the risotto flowed again, waves folding almost like silk. He tilted the pan and watched the way it moved, always the same way he watched a new hire or a lover. Critical, never fully trusting, but unable to look away. On the wall, the red phone stared back. Someone's chopping slowed to almost nothing. A clock somewhere on the other side of the wall ticked twice, impossibly loud, as if time itself had leaned closer to see. The rumor had spread through the building all day. Tonight, the call would come. The guides people had been in last month. 1, 2, 3 visits, anonymous and appraising. No names, no faces, just pressure left behind in empty wine glasses and scratched clean plates. Michelin, the red guide, La Bible, some of them called it. Half in reverence, half in resentment. A book that could lift you out of nowhere or fling you back into it, one small star at a time. The line, whispered a pastry apprentice earlier that afternoon, when she'd carried a crate of eggs past the phone. That's really it, isn't it? Her fellow had shrugged. They say so. They call you? Like, with a voice? What else would they use? He'd said, though his eyes had lingered on the receiver. In some kitchens, the story went, the phone didn't ring at all. The news arrived cold, next day, in print, like an obituary. Here, they had a number, a promise, a threat. Now, in the thick of service, no one dared go near it unless they needed something from that section of wall. And yet the room slowly rotated around it, like a galaxy around a dark star. Andre wiped a hand across his forehead with the back of his wrist, leaving a damp streak of heat and flour. He finished the risotto, turned off the flame, and stared at it. Steam lifted in long fingers, coiling up past his face. The grains were suspended perfectly, neither stodgy nor soupy, each one distinct yet joined to the others in a glossy, creamy whole. If one could scoop up a piece of the moon, he thought, fleetingly, it might look like this. He tasted it with a small, deliberate spoon. The metal touched his tongue, brief and cold, then gone. The rice slid across his palate, leaving behind heat, depth, the faint echo of white wine. Salt. Exactly where he wanted it. Or was it? His mouth tightened. The kitchen's noise rose and fell around him, blurred at the edges. He swallowed and tasted again, chasing a ghost of doubt. Chef, the saucier said quietly. The phone, chef. They said, tonight. I am aware, Andre said. His voice came out calm, clipped. A small tremor in his hand said what his words would not. Excusez-moi, chef, a waiter breathed, leaning in. Table 12 is asking if... They will wait, Andre cut in. They have waited their whole small lives to eat here. They can wait another minute while I decide whether their last conscious thought tonight will be about perfection or mediocrity. The waiter bowed his head. Bien, chef. Someone snorted again. No one was sure if it was with amusement or fear. Above them, the rain struck the roof in a harder burst, and then eased, as if the sky itself were taking a deep breath. Andre drifted back to a memory from a month ago. Chef, murmured his sous-chef, materializing at his elbow. She had deep circles under her eyes, and a burn running pale and shiny along the back of her left hand. The director called from the dining room. They expect... 3 minutes, Andre said automatically. Yes, I know. He said the inspector, the one with the chain on his pocket watch. He just ordered coffee. They're finished. The words fell like another weight onto the precarious stack already on his shoulders. Coffee meant decision. Coffee meant no more chances to impress or repair. The book, in some room not so far from here, would close on this year, and somewhere, someone would write a number next to his name. 3 minutes. The extractor fans roared in his ears, then faded suddenly, as if someone had nudged the volume dial in his brain. The clatter of forks from the dining room came through the wall clearly for 1 second, the bright, thin sound of silver teeth on porcelain, before dissolving back into the general roar. Back in the present, he didn't smile. His hand hovered over the nearest plate of risotto, fingers trembling just enough that the truffle slice seemed to shy away from them. The tremor annoyed him. He glared at his own hand as if it belonged to a careless apprentice. Stop that, he muttered. His pulse raced harder, thick at his throat, pulsing behind his eyes. On the farther wall, the red phone waited. Its coiled cord hung down in a lazy spiral, almost touching the floor, swaying ever so slightly, as if feeling a draft that no one else did. The ring did not belong to any known sound in the kitchen. It sliced through everything, through the hiss of pans, the fan's guttural hum, the muttered "we chefs," and the staccato chop of knives. It even cut through the rain outside, which seemed, for a moment, to beat more softly on the roof. The red phone shrieked once, twice, the bell inside it vibrating with the pent-up expectation of everyone in the room. Every movement stopped. A ladle paused mid-pour above a bowl, a stream of pale velouté arrested in mid-arc, thicker than it had any right to be. A pan hung off the edge of a burner, about to clatter down, yet somehow hovering for one impossible breath. A waiter froze with a tray balanced on one hand, glasses of wine trembling but not spilling, the liquid inside rising up the sides of the crystal like a tide stuck on a cliff. Even the steam suspended in the air seemed to hesitate, clouds held between boiling and vanishing. Every pair of eyes in the kitchen swung toward him. For the first time in years, no one dared say his name. The sommelier, standing nearest the phone, swallowed. His throat worked visibly, an Adam's apple bobbing once, sharply. He wiped his hand on his apron, straightened his black waistcoat, as if about to address a court, and reached for the receiver. The red plastic felt hot under his fingers. He lifted it. The ring choked off mid-note, leaving a hole where sound had been. For a second, the entire kitchen was filled with the soft crackle of the line and the hollow panting of too many lungs trying and failing to breathe quietly. "Allo," he said, voice a touch higher than usual. The voice on the other end? No one else heard it, but they all imagined it the same way. Anonymous, calm, carrying the weight of an empire made of paper and secrets. The sommelier's eyes flicked instinctively toward the ceiling, as if the words were raining from there instead of through the rubber coil. He didn't answer, only listened. His face drained of color, then flushed, then steadied. Finally, he nodded once, though the caller could not see him, and turned toward Andre. "Chef," he said. There was no room in his mouth for more. The world held its breath. Somewhere, water dripped, slow and deliberate, from a spoon onto the tiled floor. A flame under a forgotten pan died with a tiny sigh, unnoticed. The sommelier stepped forward, each footfall strangely loud, and extended the phone. The coiled cord swayed between them, a black snake, joining their hands. Andre's fingers, when he reached out, were slick with sweat. The receiver slid a millimeter in his grasp before he clenched harder. The plastic stuck to his palm. He brought it up to his ear. He did not speak yet. The line crackled softly, whispering little electric secrets. Every sound in the kitchen receded, distant and muffled, like the ocean heard from far inland. The risotto waited on the pass, golden and perfect, truffle slices fanning like petals. Steam rose from it in gentle, twisting plumes that seemed to curl around Andre's shoulders, wrapping him in warmth. He drew in a breath to say, "Allo." His chest did not obey. The pain came from nowhere and everywhere at once. It seized him in the center of his chest, a fist closing around his heart and twisting. The air in his lungs turned solid, heavy, impossible. The kitchen, already hot, flared white-hot around the edges, the light from the fluorescents sharpening until it seemed to slice into his eyes. Andre doubled over, the receiver slipping from his grasp and swinging on its cord. Someone shouted his name. The voice sounded underwater. He grabbed at his apron, fingers knotting in the damp fabric, as if he could tear the pain out of his body that way. The starched cotton bunched in his fists, creasing under his grip. His vision narrowed, the edges darkening like burnt sugar, leaving only a bright circle in the middle. His knees buckled. He would have laughed, at the timing, at the cruel drama of it, if he'd had any breath left. This, then, this was how the universe wrote jokes. Someone lunged to catch him. Hands collided with his shoulders, but failed to stop his fall. He fell forward, onto his own masterpiece. His face hit the plate with a wet, obscene sound, one he would have banned from the kitchen on any other night. The porcelain cracked under the impact, a thin, sharp sound like a hairline fracture in glass. Rice and sauce and truffle oil exploded outward, splattering across the pass, onto the arms of the nearest cooks, onto the pristine front of the sous chef's jacket. Someone pulled at his shoulders, turning him. The world rolled, spinning the overhead lights into long white smears. He caught a glimpse of the red phone swinging gently back and forth, its receiver bumping against the wall with a dull, rhythmic thud. The line hissed. Somewhere inside that hiss, a voice was still speaking, faint and insistent. Allô? Allô? Vous m'entendez? The words blurred into simple sound. Andre's vision tunneled further, until the stainless steel, the frantic faces, the swinging phone all faded. What remained, grotesque and inescapable, was the memory of the last spoonful of risotto on his tongue. He tasted it again in his mind. The creaminess, the heat, the whisper of wine, and the salt. The thought settled into him with the inexorable weight of truth, and then everything loosened. The tight fist around his heart let go, not out of mercy, but because it had nothing left to hold. The sounds in the kitchen, shouts, metal, glass breaking, drifted away, as if he were walking down a corridor made of steam, the walls closing in soft and white around him. Outside, Paris went on. Cars hissed past on wet streets. Rainwater ran along the gutters, carrying cigarette butts and soggy bits of paper toward the drains. A couple under a shared umbrella argued softly about nothing in particular, their words misting in the cold air. In a city full of lights and stories and tiny, absurd tragedies, one man's heart had stopped over a plate of risotto, and the world rolled calmly on. The legend of Chef André, the tyrant, the artist, the man who could taste a missing grain of salt in a stockpot, hit the tiles of his own kitchen and went still. But the gods were not yet finished with him. The kitchen collapsed inward, steel and flame dissolving into something unstable, voices stretching thin as wire. The word chef broke apart. Sound thinned. Light bent. Heat curdled into something damp and close. The rhythm of service broke mid-beat, as though the world itself had miscounted. Gravity turned. He fell through it. And when gravity returned, it did not ease him in. It stopped him. Stillness. Heavy. Stale. Enclosed. His face pressed into the sour breath of mold and old sweat. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city moved. Mopeds rattling over wet cobblestones, a distant horn cutting through morning traffic, shutters clattering open as Lyon woke itself unwillingly into day. Something was very wrong. It felt like another time entirely, France, the 1970s, when the Michelin Guide ruled and stars turned chefs into celebrities. Reputations rose and fell on its pages.